So you basically earn 1/3 of the coupon, or 1/3 of the coupon has already accrued. That's pretty much the calculation of accrued interest. And if you know the clean price, add the accrued interest, that gives you the invoice price, aka dirty price. If I tell you dirty price and you can calculate accrued interest, you can figure out what the clean price is. Let's talk about one more thing. Tax implications. Federal bonds are subject to income tax. The interest on federal bonds are subject to income tax. But interest on bonds issued by state, local, and municipal governments are not. State, local, municipal governments bonds are not taxable at federal level. Obviously, they're not taxable in the state in which they're issued. Federal bonds are also free of state taxes. So yields on treasuries and so-called munis, it's an affectionate nickname for municipal bonds, munis, should be compared on an after-tax basis. For example, 30-year treasuries yield come on, let's look at it from CNBC. .847%. Suppose your tax rate is 22%, your marginal tax rate, because that's the only thing that matters. What is the after-tax yield? Well, after-tax yield is equal to pre-tax yield divided by 1 plus tax rate. So in this case, it's going to be 4.847 1 plus 23%. After taxes, it's 3.97%. Let's find 30-year muni yield. These are indicative numbers. For example, Bloomberg rates some bonds. This is a quick way of finding it. 30-year rate is 443. Which one would you prefer, the municipals or the federals? After taxes, it depends upon your tax rate. If you're a pension fund, you don't pay any taxes, okay? Then you should go for treasuries, because on a pre-tax yield, you would get 4.84. But if you're using this in a taxable mutual fund, you may consider municipal bonds. They're yielding about 50 basis points above the treasuries on an after-tax basis. Remember, municipal bonds do not pay federal taxes. I'm sorry, the income from municipal bonds are not subject to federal taxation. But even then, it's not clear what's, other than the yield, what's one clear difference between municipal bonds and treasury bonds. And municipal bonds are bonds issued by state governments, local governments, or local agencies or local governments. For example, the city of Lexington may issue a bond, that would be a muni. State of Kentucky may issue a bond, that would be a muni. EKU issues bonds to finance building projects that are backed by state guarantee, of course. Those are also munis, they're not subject to federal taxation. So what's the key difference between municipal bonds and treasuries? What do you think? If you think about what bonds represent a promise to pay a certain cash flow, right?
The treasury is always going to pay.
Exactly. Even though it's small, there is a chance that municipal bonds may default.
So the treasury will never default.
Treasury, theoretically at least, will never default. I mean, there's no reason for a government to default on a bond that is denominated in a currency that it has authority to print or issue. Treasury can issue coins with any denomination. Tomorrow, national debt may be handled by issuing a coin that says 33 trillion on it. That's going to create shitloads of inflation, but there will not be any default. Probably we'll see 200% inflation for the next year. There may be a civil war, but there will not be a default. I mean, that's how Germany ended up paying much of its debt in 1920s with the hyperinflation. Because there is a lag between printing of the money and its effect on inflation. And, you know, the old name for that is actually called seigniorage. In the old days, you inflated the currency by actually shaving the coins. It still said one denarii, but it actually had less gold in it. That's what we mean by shaving it. That's one of the reasons. If you look at the coins, they have these little things around it, right? It's from the old days. So that nobody would shave a little bit out of it. Because if they do, it's going to be flat. You're not going to have those patterns. There's a reason for a lot of things. And let me see what kind of rating differential that is. Again, from Fred. Let's look at AAA option adjusted spread. Yeah, that's about AAA spread. 46 basis points. That means corporate bonds relative to the treasuries of the same maturity yield about 46 basis points higher. Let's look at these. The difference is actually exactly 46 basis points. So on a credit quality adjusted basis, these are actually the same. Because municipal bonds on average are AAA. Specific municipal bond may be lower, and presumably state of Texas, state of Alaska has a higher rating than, I don't know, Louisiana. Alaska has a lot of oil revenue and all sorts of other stuff. But on average, that's roughly the yield spread for AAA. So on a credit adjusted basis, they're actually equivalent. So that additional 46 basis points you get is compensation for possibility of default. And that has been coming down quite a bit. Usually such spreads are higher during recessionary times and lower during boom times. And look at 2018. Yeah, we're actually probably the lowest in the last 10 years. Maybe, yeah, middle 2021, it was a little bit higher. But remember, Fed was buying corporate bonds those days as a support to the market. They're not doing that anymore. Okay, let's give a break. After a break, we're going to continue with solving some numerical problems in Chapter 6. Then I'll kind of get Chapter 7 started. We'll finish Chapter 7 next week. No Jeopardy next week, but the week after, we'll do a Jeopardy on 6 and 7 combined.
When is our homework going to be due for? Is it going to be 6 and 7?
No, it'll be separate,
Okay.
but I'm gonna finish 6 today, so I'll give you guys till next Wednesday.